And Dudley.
And good morning, everyone. Good morning on the Money Matters Morning Edition. On a beautiful day in the neighborhood, I have a very special guest today, and my guest today is Charlie Cook. And this is a subject that's right on the top of the burner today. And Charlie is an instructor in gun safety, firearm safety. Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning, Dick. It's great to be here.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think a lot of people do not just simply understand is the different types of guns, the different numbers of licenses there are for those weapons, and, you know, where you do this and teach people. And I thought it would be a great discussion this morning, and maybe start off by explaining to people some of the different courses that you teach.
Okay. Basically the entry-level course that I teach is the NRA's Home Firearm Safety course. I like to tell people it's rifles and shotguns and handguns, oh my. We cover how to be safe with the firearms. We talk about what safety is. We talk about the 3 safety rules, about always keeping a gun pointed in a safe direction, always keep your finger off the trigger, and always keep it unloaded until you're ready to shoot it. We talk about how you load and unload the different types of handguns. I do revolvers and semi-automatic handguns. We talk about single action, double action only, so different ways that the firearms work. We also talk about different types of rifles and shotguns and how to be safe with those. And during those classes, I show everyone how to be safe, and I show them how to load and unload the guns so that they don't hurt themselves, so that they know how to do it properly, depending on what type of firearm that they get. The next course, and that course is it's about 4 hours long, and that's the minimum that you need in order to...
4 hours?
Yeah, 4 hours, yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things that you mentioned in that course is you teach them how to load and unload a gun, and the things you teach them not to do. Be careful where you aim it. Don't keep your finger on the trigger, et cetera, et cetera. And yet we hear these stories, these sad stories where 2 kids were fooling around with a gun and the brother shoots his brother, you know.
Right, now...
And you hear these horrendous stories and you say, how does this happen?
How does this happen? Well, obviously whoever owns the firearm is not being responsible. There are laws that we have here in Massachusetts that are safe storage laws, which the state tells us in order to keep the firearms unloaded, or excuse me, in order to have them, you have to keep them unloaded and secure from unauthorized users. An unauthorized user is anybody that doesn't have a firearms license. Even though my kids are, you know, about 10 and 12 years old, they're unauthorized users, but I teach them how to be safe with them so that when we go to the range and we go shooting, that they know how to be safe, and we go through the safety stuff every time that we head to the range.
So you can take them to a range and they can shoot even though they don't have a license?
Yes, yeah. And they're essentially shooting underneath my license.
Okay.
So like when you teach someone to drive, they're driving under my license even though I'm sitting in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
Not that my kids are driving, they're 10 and 12. But
right.
Yeah, same sort of thing. I could take you shooting sometime. That would be a lot of fun to do, and teach you how to be safe with it.
Let me tell you, Bob, you have to understand me. I want no part of guns.
That's okay.
I have a story to share with you, and it's in a way it's a sad story. In my life, I had the great opportunity to know Senator John Kennedy. I interviewed him at a radio station up in Ware that I had at the time, W.E.S.O-4-18. I was only a kid, and I interviewed him when he was senator. 2 years later, he ran and became president of the United States.
Wow.
And we had a little relationship. He was coming up to the university, to Amherst College, up in Amherst, Mass., to dedicate the Robert Frost Library, and I was invited to go see him and meet him and say hi to him. I went there, and it was, actually happens, it was 1 month to the day before he was killed.
Wow.
It was October 22nd of 1963. And he dedicated the Robert Frost Library. He flew into Chicopee, and then they brought him over by limousine to Amherst. Get out of the car, and there was a big, long walkway to go where he was going to go, and they had the room down there the windows were all boarded up and everything, and they had a white phone and a red phone on the desk and all that, you know. But anyway, as he was walking in, there was a bunch of kids along the fence, and people had come out, the school kids all come out to see him, and he was waving and everything, and some kid had a broken ankle, a broken leg, and he stuck it through the fence and asked the president to sign it. And the president stopped, squatted down, and signed the kid's cast. When we got inside, the Secret Service was all over the president. Mr. President, we've asked you not to do that. You can't just stop and jump into the crowd. And he looked around, and he had this. He had this great smile. He had this Irish charm, and he looked at them, and all of us. There was 4 or 5 of us there, and then at that point, and he said, "Let me tell you something. If it's tough enough to stop a bullet that you know is coming, without trying to stop one that you don't know is coming, okay?" And then he said this: "If somebody is willing to give up their life to get yours, there's nothing you can really do." And he made those 2 statements, and they were so profound. And so I've never forgotten them. So I don't have a gun. I don't have any urge to have one. I don't ever want to see one. I'm fine. I think they belong on the side of a police officer, and that's fine with me. You know,
that's cool.
And it's just me. I mean, I'm not a violent guy.
I'm not either.
I played sports, so I suppose, you know, I hit my share of people. But I was skinny, so I used to catch the ball and run out of bounds, because if they ever hit me, they'd kill me. So, but at any event, the thing is that a lot of times we hear these sad stories, and I'm so delighted you're here, Charlie, because you've already, for me personally, clarified some misnomers that I had. You know, especially in Massachusetts. I can't speak for other states, nor should we.
Right.
But it is you know, interesting, and mistakes happen. We had that horrible situation over in Westfield. You know, people don't use their heads sometimes, and things happen.
Oh, this is true. This is true. I really think that teaching people how to be safe with a firearm is really key and really essential, because it shows them how to be safe and lets them know, hey, listen, there's safe directions, there's unsafe directions, and you got to pay attention to all this stuff. I tell people in my classes, you know, we teach our kids to learn to be safe with scissors and knives and matches and gasoline and chainsaws and cars. And I think a gun or a firearm is just something else to be safe with. They're a lot of fun to go recreational shooting. I've taken my kids out and, you know, shoot it. We fill water jugs up with colored water and shoot those at the range. I do competitive shooting. I like to do recreational shooting and bust clays out of the air when they're flying, and, you know, trap and skeet shooting, and that stuff's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it's a good recreational thing to do. And I like to pass it on to anybody and
well, I think it's you're right. I mean, if someone wants to do that, there's nothing wrong with that. The key to the whole thing is safety and responsibility, and
definitely.
And you know, I vividly remember when I got my driver's license. I was 16 years old. This is back in the 50s, and I had passed the test, and the registry inspector was sitting in the front seat, and he was writing out the paperwork, and then he filled out my little temporary license. And as he handed it to me, he said an interesting thing. He says, "Young man, to you, this is a license to operate a motor vehicle. But I want you to think very carefully what I'm just giving you. I am handing you a license to kill." And I sat there, and he said, "Now let me explain that. If you do not drive this car responsibly, if you take chances, if you speed when you shouldn't be speeding, and of course in those days we really didn't, you know, you didn't dare drink or your father would break your neck."
Right. But why how the times have changed.
but he said, you know, I want you to understand what you really have. This is a big machine, and you need to protect it and drive carefully. And you know, you just went through this course, and you were so careful, and you did it so perfect to impress me. I want you to never forget that, and I want you to drive that way all the rest of your life. Well, you know, when you think about it, it's true, you know. And in your case, every time somebody gets a license and they have a weapon, they have a license to kill.
Not that they have a license to kill, but they certainly have that opportunity and the ability, because firearms can be used in defensive purposes, and they can be used in offensive purposes. And you know, bad guys with guns go out and do bad things with them.
I mean, the thing that you have to understand, and I don't even know where you begin. It's just like we saw in Boston. You know, some fruitcake. You know.
Oh yeah.
Some nut trying whatever he did it for, getting back at somebody, or just for the fun of watching it, you know, maimed and killed 3 people and maimed a lot of others, and their lives will never be the same again. And so how do you really prevent there's only so much security you can provide.
This is true.
And
There
it's
is.
true with this. I mean, some nuts, some fruitcake. Now, in this case, he obviously got the weapon down in Newtown from his mother's house, so
Right.
they weren't secure, and if they were, he had a key.
Right. I'm not sure 100%, exactly what all the
Yeah.
details are. But from what I understand, in Connecticut, you have to have a license in order to you have to have a license before you can purchase anything. I believe that she was, his mother was probably a law-abiding citizen who
Yeah.
had all the guns legally.
Yeah.
He was, I think it was, was he over 21? I forget.
was 20.
He was 20. Okay. So here in Massachusetts, a 20-year-old can have access to rifles and shotguns. If the parents think that their children is responsible enough and old enough and can handle the responsibility of having access to them, then they can have access to them. But if they don't, then they should certainly check and make sure and keep them secure so that they can't get to them. Here in Massachusetts, the adults should be responsible for that. Like I said, I've got a couple of kids. I keep my guns locked and secured and keep them unloaded, and that's just how we have to keep them. Now, is that going to stop me from my kids having access to them? No. Can they find out where the keys are? Probably. Can they get to them? Sure. If they really wanted to, they could. But what I've done is taught my kids how to be safe with them. I teach them how to load and unload them. I teach them what a safe direction is. I teach them to keep their finger off the trigger so that every time we head to the range that they know this is what our safe direction is. We know Dad's going to keep an eye on us. He's going to keep us pointed in the right direction. If there's something that's not right, I'm going to stop him right away, and we're going to say, all right, you know what? Let's head out. Let's go home. Let's whatever, get an ice cream on the way home
Yeah.
or something like this.
Yeah.
And my kids, having the guns in the house for me it's not a big deal for my kids. My kids know it's what I'm into. They know it's what I do. They know that when I'm with them, if we're going to go to the shooting range, that they've got the opportunity to shoot, or they can sit in the car and not shoot, and they can bring their iPods and their DS and a book
Yeah.
and keep themselves entertained. But if they want to shoot, I'm going to let them, and I'm going to make sure it's safe, and I'm make sure that they know how to use the gun safely. They know how to operate the guns. I bought my son. This is this is kind of nuts. I bought my son a 20 gauge shotgun for his 12th birthday, and he doesn't want anything to do with it, and that's okay. That's fine. I told him I'd give it to his sister when she turns 12, but I just teach him how to be safe with it, and teach him to respect them, and know the things that they can do with them. Know that there's an inherent danger to them, and know that you have to be safe and you have to be conscious. It's kind of tough with my son to be safe with Nerf guns, because Nerf guns, you have your friends over, they will have little
Yeah.
Nerf gun battles. But I tell him if his sister's not in the Nerf gun battle, then they can't point it at her. So it kind of comes from that. I do the same thing with water guns, with a couple of little toy BB guns that the kids have. I have a little gun that makes a clicking noise that looks like a James Bond gun. Same thing. You keep your finger off the trigger, keep it pointed in a safe direction, and just hammer that home every time you pick it up.
Well, that, in fairness, that's what you do, because, in fact, you do this on a regular basis. You teach these courses.
Mm-hmm.
But the question then becomes, and you're speaking for yourself, and I think that's wonderful. But what about the other fellows who aren't as attentive, who don't pay as much attention, who may be careless around people with their kids?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that you have to be careful of.
Oh, sure, this is true. Now, they've had to, in order to get the gun, they've had to go through a class, and they've had to learn about what all the safety rules are, and learn about what all the rules and regulations are for keeping them stored up. But I can't go to everybody's house and be responsible.
Nope.
And I can say, hey, listen, here's what you need to do. Here's how you safe with them. Here's how you work them. Here's how you shoot them. Here's how you be safe with them. Keep them from unauthorized users. And I go through the whole thing. I say, listen, if your kids are going to be unauthorized users, if they don't have a license, they're unauthorized. If you want to take them to the range, that's fine. You can take them to the range. They can shoot essentially under your license and have a great time with that. I say if I've done classes before where the man's come in, the man's come into the class, and he's like, yeah, I want to be able to protect my wife and my kids.